Hi everyone, today I'm going to be talking to you about my favorite makeup brushes. Now most of the makeup brushes that I have that I use on a daily basis are from MAC Makeup. And these brushes are a little bit on the pricier end, but they have held up very beautifully. They have lasted me. I'm probably going on about 9 years of having these particular brushes. They wash well, they hold their shape, they have very little shedding, and they apply makeup absolutely beautifully. Before I had these brushes, I had a MAC special edition kit that came out around Christmas time with a set of brushes, and MAC will do this once or twice a year. They'll release kind of a kit of different brushes for a lot less expensive than their normal, more professional line of brushes. They're typically a little bit shorter and a little bit lesser quality, but they are a great way to get started and experiment with some different types of brushes if you're just learning or you want to try out something new. I did get to the point where I decided I wanted to invest in their regular, more pro quality brushes, and that has been a great investment for me because I do use them on a daily basis. But that said, I don't think you need to spend a lot of money to get good makeup brushes and to have a really beautiful makeup application. The trick is really having brushes that are the right shape and the right density for the area of the face that you're going to be working on. And so what I thought I would do is share with you the brushes that I use on a daily basis and what I use them for, and then you can do some research and perhaps find brushes that are similar from another brand if you don't want to spend the same price tag for the MAC brushes. So let's go ahead and get started. The first one that I would typically use would be my 239 shader brush. The reason why I like this brush is because it is dense and it is firm and it is flat. When you have a brush that is more dense, you're going to pick up more product, and this is particularly important when you're working with a powder shadow as opposed to a cream to powder shadow. I would use this brush to apply whatever color I'm wearing on my lid, and today I have sort of this silver blue gray color, and I would pick that up and actually pat my eyeshadow on. So the flat area is what's great. It allows you to sort of pack on a lot of shadow when you want a lot of pigment, when you want kind of a bolder application, and it's great when you're working on a larger surface area such as the eyelid. If I was working with a cream to powder shadow, then I would use my MAC 252, which is a larger shader brush. I find I like this one a little bit better when I'm working with my cream shadow senses, but otherwise when I'm working with powder, a lot of times I'll use this 239. But either one are great. If I had to pick one, I might pick the 239 because I think it's a little bit more versatile. It's smaller. It is easier to work with if you are just getting started because you're not covering quite as much surface area. I think it's a little more versatile. I also use this brush if I want to add a little highlighter here in the area underneath the arch of my eyebrow, and I sometimes use it to add a little bit of a highlight or a shimmer right here in the inner corners. That sort of dense and firm ridge is great for those areas. Then the next brush I would usually use for my eyes would be my 217 blending brush. I love this brush. This is one of my top 2 favorite makeup brushes of all time. I would use this for a kind of medium color shadow like this gray to apply here in the creases of my eye, and also for a darker, deeper shadow. In this case, I was using a MAC Carbon to apply here in the corners to sort of, you know, smoke that out or deepen the shadow. This is such a great brush because it is very dense and it picks up a lot of product, which is great when you are doing heavier smoky eyes. It blends amazingly and I love the dome shape of it. This is a great one to have. I also have the MAC 224 more fluffy blending brush. This one, because it is fluffier and less dense, it will pick up less product. So I might use this if I just need to add a little bit of shadow and I don't want to go in as heavy. I might use this to sort of buff or blend it in without moving too much of the shadow around. I just want to get a soft blend. I sometimes use this to pick up a bronzer or a contour shadow or powder if I want to contour the sides of my nose. You can use this right here for contouring on your cheeks. It's not going to pick up as much product, so sometimes that's nice if you want to start with a little bit, blend it out, and then maybe you decide you want to go in and add a little bit more. You're not starting so heavy. So this is a great one to have. If I had to pick one, I would pick the 217. I can sometimes get away with just using this on a quick day. If I'm on the go, I can use this to pick up like my shadow for the lid, and being a little bit careful, I can sort of just get that shadow where I want and then do another color in the crease and just call it a day and be done with it. But again, they're both great for different purposes. The next one I use a lot is my 219 pencil brush. This is a great brush if you like to do smoky eyes, if you like to line under your lids, or you like a smudgy look. I will use this to pull color underneath my eye. What I've done here today is I've actually taken the color I used on my lid, that same sort of blue, silvery, gray color, and for my lid here, and then I pulled it underneath my eye. And then I sort of smudged that out. I will also use this if I'm using eyeliner and I want to sort of make my eyeliner less crisp and I want it sort of a smudge, more blended look. I will go up here and go like that. This has a nice point to it. It's also fairly dense, so it does pick up a lot of product. So sometimes I will use that here to do the highlights in the corners of my eyes. And sometimes I might use it up here, just depending on you know, what I'm doing. It's great when you need to work in a small area, but generally I'm using this for under the eye and for smoking out and smudging my eyeliner. That brings me to my second favorite brush of all time, the 217 and the 266 flat angle liner brush. These are my two favorite brushes that I probably can't live without. This is the brush that I use to apply my eyeliner. And I used gel liner with this brush, but I also use a lot of powder shadow with this brush. So I have then any color shadow I could possibly think of to work with to create an eyeliner. If I want to do a crazy red eyeliner, I can do that with this brush. I could use a blush. I could use a fun, crazy powder shadow to apply my eyeliner, and I would typically get my brush a little bit wet and pick up some powder and I would apply it like that. I also love this brush now that I'm using more of the Shadow Sense. I love this with Onyx Black Shadow Sense because it creates this really deep, beautiful, crisp line for eyeliner. So this is great with Shadow Sense if you want to use that for a liner as well. I do have a video on how to do a winged eyeliner look if you want to check that out. I love this brush. It's one of my all-time favorites. So those are the brushes that I would typically use for my eyes. Now for foundation, I have a couple different brushes that I use. I have the 137 stippling brush from MAC. I used this when I was using more of the MAC Studio Fix Fluid, which is a very full coverage foundation. It's very opaque, and because it's so opaque and full coverage and a little bit thicker, I like to use the stippling brush because I could sort of just dab that on. I would a lot of times squeeze some on my hand and pick it up like that, and I could kind of dab, 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 and I would get a sheerer, thinner coverage that way, and then I would kind of just buff that out using the stippling brush, and I could get a little bit of a thinner coverage. Then my foundation changes, or my foundation preferences have changed a little bit over the years. I'm a little bit older, I'm in my 30s now, I have a child, and I don't always really want a real heavy full coverage foundation. And as I started to experiment with other foundations, and in particular I'm really liking the Senegence Make Sense in the Advanced Anti-Aging line. That foundation is a little bit more of a medium, maybe more sheer coverage. It's definitely buildable, but because it is a thinner consistency and the coverage is a little bit lighter, I found that I didn't like this brush as much with those foundations, and I decided to try the Real Techniques Expert Face Brush that gets a lot of great reviews both on beauty blogs and on YouTube. And I really like this brush for working with those lighter coverage foundations because it's dense, it picks up a little bit more product, I can kind of dab on and I can get it a little bit heavier in areas where I need a little more coverage. I can let it dry, go back and add another layer in just that area, and then I can sort of buff that in, and I'm able to get a really sort of flawless airbrush finish that way with this brush as well. So both are great. I think it depends on your personal preference and perhaps what type of foundation you are working with. And then for blush, I typically use my MAC 129 blush brush, and I would just use this to apply some blush right here on the apples of my cheeks and maybe sweep that back a little bit. This is also the brush I would use for powder. If I was using either a translucent or a setting powder, I would use that all over. It's also great for just sort of like blending everything in. I believe MAC does have a larger powder brush. I don't necessarily think that you need to have two. I mean, a girl can never have enough brushes, but if you could only pick one, this is great for both powder and blush. I think you can use that for either purpose. So those are the brushes that I like to use and the ones that I use most commonly on a day-to-day basis. But like I said, I don't think that you have to spend a lot of money on brushes in order to get a great finish. There's some other brands that get a lot of positive reviews, are Sigma and Morphe. I have friends that have tried brushes from Amazon. I've been really loving this Real Techniques brush, and this was very inexpensive. I think Real Techniques makes some really great brushes, and I'd love to check out their eye makeup brushes as well and see what else they have to offer. Some places I've seen brushes for inexpensive are like Marshall's or TJ Maxx. Sometimes they have a little beauty section. I've also enjoyed some brushes from Sonia Kashuk at Target. So there are other options out there. The key is really making sure that you have the right shape and the right density. So I hope that was helpful to you, and perhaps you will find some brushes that work really well for you. Maybe you want to try out these MAC ones. Feel free to let me know if you have any questions. Leave a comment down below, and I hope to see you guys soon in a future video. Bye-bye.